when the bubble is going to burst. Clickbait, right? The fact of the matter is the bubble ain't going to burst. And I walk through the 3 primary issues why that's true. And I welcome you to take a look and give me your thoughts.
Agent Power Huddle is a daily jumpstart.
Hey, did I get your attention? We're doing something special for the next month. We're going to focus on now business. Like, how do you generate income today, right now? My name is Jesse Zagorski. You probably know me as one of the regular hosts here, producer of the Agent Power Huddle. I'm also a broker associate with EXP. And what I keep hearing over and over again is agents that truly need to shift their business. The market shifted, they need to shift, and they got to close the deals today. And so whether you're a brand new agent, this series is for you. Experienced agent, this series is for you. It doesn't matter. Agent on a team leader, we're going to give you strategies and techniques to figure out how to scale and grow your business to close deals today, not in the future, not tomorrow, today. This is what we're focusing on all month, the techniques, the strategies you need. So welcome to the Agent Power Huddle.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. I love that revised intro that Jesse did because it's never been more critical, right? We're in a shifting market. So figuring out ways to generate now business can really be a difference maker. And as we've seen, if you've been in this industry for any length of time, shifting markets either thins the herd or generates superstars. And it's basically a decision in your own mind that decides which one you're going to be. So how many of you, show of hands if you're on video, how many of you have buyers right now who are saying, I'm going to wait until rates go down, or I'm going to wait until prices go down? Am I the only one? Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. It's understandable, right? Like I definitely, before we kick this thing off, I just want to set the context. It's completely reasonable for someone who's not informed like we are to think, the last time we had a recession and the last time we had this kind of volatility in the stock market, what happened? My freaking house went down by 30%, right? I mean, that's their most recent recollections. The difference now is we are in a different economy. We're in a different recession. In fact, I don't know if you guys heard it. I literally heard it on the drive-in this morning. GDP for the third quarter went up. And so we're already out of the recession. Look at that, right? I know, loosely defined, Mike, I'm with you there. But the definition is pretty black and white. The media and the government would like to think it's more complicated. We were in a recession for the first quarter and the second quarter. We didn't know until the end of the second quarter that we had 2 months of consecutive shrinking GDP, but we did, and they all wanted to pretend like we didn't. And then the third quarter, it actually grew a little over 2%, which outperformed forecasts. So the point I've made in other Zoom meetings is that the Great Recession started with a weak economy and 8 months of inventory and irresponsible lending practices, right? I think we could all agree those are the 3 main drivers for the Great Recession. This recession was initially driven by COVID, right? We had a very short recession last year during COVID. And then now this one also being quite short, driven by supply chain issues. We could argue whether that's self-inflicted or government driven, but at the end of the day, that's part of the issue, right? And so I don't begrudge any buyer who's like, holy crap, would I be better served to hang out and wait? Because last time this happened, prices went down 30%. Couldn't I benefit from that, right? So what we want to do as professionals is educate them on what the economy is doing and where it's headed, while at the same time, illuminating the fact that that ain't going to happen. We aren't going to see depreciation. Now, have you seen homes in your area go down from last month to this month? Sure. The biggest driver of that is sellers reducing their list prices, right? But we don't measure appreciation month to month. We measure it year over year, right? So the appreciation, I'm in the Seattle market, as you can tell by the scene behind me. Our appreciation numbers for, what month are we? We're in October, for September, were 13%. I say that with a laugh because the historical averages for single family dwellings across the entire United States is 8 to 10%. So we're still above average, right? And I've been saying and forecasting for a while that we're going to see it dip down closer to 5%, but it doesn't mean it's going to go negative, right? And if you want to really get into the granular on why I believe that with all my heart, watch, I do a market update video every month. And if you go to my YouTube channel, just search for Ed Laine Broker. There's one from May entitled When the Bubble is Gonna Burst. Talk about clickbait, right? The fact of the matter is the bubble ain't gonna burst. And I walk through the 3 primary issues why that's true. And I welcome you to take a look and give me your thoughts, because I talk through a number of facts, not opinion, and then I draw a conclusion from that, which is opinion, right? And so all of our opinions matter, and our ability to communicate that to our clients, our leads, our prospects is pretty important. So what I want to share on the screen today is we actually did a mastermind on my team about 3 weeks ago, I want to say. And it was called The Top 6 Things to Say to Buyers Who Want to Wait, right? And it really was a mastermind. And if I can, I'd like to replicate that to some degree here. We got a fair amount of people on this call. So by all means, chime in, because we're going to talk about what are some of the things that you can illuminate about the market. What are some of the things that you can use to allay their concerns, things like that. So let's dive in, shall we? So the top 6 reasons to buy. Number 1 reason, rates. And think of the irony of that, right? Most consumers are going to go, I shouldn't buy because of rates, right? But think about this. The Fed meets next week, right? Show of hands, how many people think the Fed's going to raise rates next week? Right? Me too. I actually had a bet. I was in Dallas for a conference, and a guy who is the senior director of a hedge fund who's super plugged in, we were debating whether the last one was going to be 100 basis points or 75. And he said 100 and gave me the reasons why. And his reasons made sense. The main driver was, the Inflation Reduction Act was not anything as it's entitled. And the markets took a beating when they signed that act into law because they knew it was going to have the opposite effect, right? And so for that reason, he said, Fed's going to do it 100 basis points. And as we all know now in hindsight, it was 75. So I emailed him. I said, I should have made a bet with you, but I didn't. So the good news is 7% isn't that out of the ordinary, right? It just stings for people who have only been paying attention for the last 5 to 10 years, right? Because we literally never had rates under 5 until 2010. Think about that, right? Another sort of corollary is because of that, NAR estimates 75% of realtors have never seen rates above 5. Let that sink in, right? I mean, shoot, for those of you that don't know me, I was a licensed loan officer for 25 years before I even got my real estate license. And so I was the mortgage guru for a long time. And my own parents had a 14% interest rate in the 80s. And I was like, what the hell are you doing? Your son could give you something, under 10. And they were like, oh, we just never asked or never thought about it. So it's all about perspective, right? And like the screen says, the 70-year average is 7.2. Well, Bankrate.com says 7.16 for the last week. We're right in the average, right? So does that suck? Yeah, compared to 3.1. But is it, exorbitant or out of line? Not based on historical averages. Now, what has to happen for a lot of buyers is they have to work through the grieving process of, oh man, I missed the 3%, right? We've all, if you own a home and you didn't refi into the threes, you're probably feeling the same way right now. But here's the point I want to make about rates. A, they're not that terrible. B, if we all agree the Fed's going to raise rates next week, and they actually have another open market committee meeting in December, and I believe they're going to raise rates again because the inflation is just too out of control, right? So what you have to ask yourself is how many times will they need to raise rates before inflation will start to subside, at which point they will start to lower rates. I heard an economist just yesterday say he anticipates being back down in the fives by the end of next year. I've been saying the same thing for about 2 months, right? Because we have never had a recession where rates did not go down. Think about that, right? We've literally, in our country's history, we've had, I think, 13 recessions. And in every single one of them, rates went down and home values went up. So is this one going to be different? Well, yeah, to a degree, right? Because we're starting the recession with unbelievable inflation. So they're going to go up before they go down. But once they get inflation under control, they're going to start to lower rates again. So you should be talking to your clients about, hey, let's buy a property that you can afford, right? I never want to put somebody in a situation where they have to eat top ramen every night. But let's buy something you can afford, and you should plan to refinance as soon as the end of next year, right? So again, we don't want to do the same mistakes we did in 05, 06, and 07, which is, buy a 1% ARM and expect the payment to never change, and then you're sorely disappointed when it does. But buy something you can afford and just know that the rates, if they improve to the point where a refi makes sense, a lot of economists and myself believe that's going to happen probably within 12 months, maybe 18. And there's a little bit of nuance there when you're talking about loan product selection too. So like I closed a deal last month where we had 23 grand in buy down money. That's a motivated seller, right? So we took advantage of that. But does it make sense to buy the rate down on a 30-year mortgage when you think you're going to refi in 12 to 18 months? No, right? Because you just wasted that money by buying the interest rate down from 7 to 5.8, 7.5 or 6. And then you're going to refi in 12 months potentially. And so it would have been smarter to take that 20 grand and just take it off the price, right? Or use it to get into like a 5/1 ARM, because it's safe to assume that you're going to be able to refi within 5 years. Even if you're not as optimistic as I am, you're going to be able to refi within 5 years. Wouldn't you agree? So anyway, the short version of this slide is, if we all believe rates are going to continue to go up, isn't buying sooner smarter than buying later? And the short answer is yeah, right? Reason number 2, inventory. Now, this is specific to King County, Seattle area, which is where I'm at right now, but analyze this for your own market. What has inventory done over the last couple of months? Go back 3 months if you want. Go back whatever period makes it more compelling, right? But in our area, it's gone up 46% in the last 60 days. And that's because of high interest rates, buyer apprehension, right? And so inventory is growing. What's funny, and the pivot that I would say to sellers is, when your inventory is at 1 or 1.5 months, going up 46% just means you got to 2, right? So we're still in a seller's market. But for buyers, we're trying to motivate buyers. It's, hey, man, you got more choices. You got less competition. Yeah, rates are higher than we'd like, but it's temporary. How many of you have heard the mortgage saying, you marry the house but date the rate, right? So that means find the perfect property and just know that your mortgage is going to be temporary because hopefully your rates go down and we refi out of it. All right. Number 3, seller motivation, right? Gone are the days of escalator clauses, waiving freaking everything in your offer, right? Non-refundable earnest monies and even released earnest money to the seller. I have a deal. Some of you heard me tell this story before, but I've not met others of you, so I'll tell it again. So those of you that heard it, tough. That I had a client who had a front row seat for the shift. We were writing offers in April, 200 grand over asking, and then losing. And they got so beat up by it, they decided to take the month of May and June just off. They're like, I need a break. The emotional stress of losing like this sucks, so I'm out. We go back into the market in July, put something into escrow in August and close. And we got it 180 grand under asking. That's the shift, right? And that's because sellers are motivated. Think about the apprehension that buyers feel because of rates converts to panic in sellers, right? Because their neighbor sold in 12 minutes with 20 offers, and now their house is sitting. That story I just told, you know how long that house was on the market? 14 days. And we got it 180 grand under. I mean, it's crazy how motivated sellers can be. But remember, nobody buys and sells because of rates, right? They're buying and selling because of some life event or some opportunity. The rates are just an influencer, but they're not the motivation. And so when a seller puts his home on the market, it's because they're trying to get away from pain or get towards pleasure. You know, in this case, this one was actually an estate. And so the heirs were like, yeah, let's get this deal done. So it was funny too. The agent tried to play hardball with me. That didn't work. And so he later said, we are not losing this buyer. I said, I know. All right. Interest rates again. Rates could decline in the future. And to that point, we have never had a recession where they didn't. So I kind of touched on this on the earlier rate slide. And I wrote could, they will. Like you don't see rates decline 13 previous recessions and assume the 14th one they're not going to, right? The question is just how much and how soon, because we have this initial window of time where they actually need to raise rates to stem inflation. I think I've beaten that horse enough. Number 5. Is it better to own something that's appreciating with a high interest rate or wait if you think it's going to go down and buy it with a lower interest rate but at a higher price? That's a valid question, right? And that's a question your buyers may not ask, but it's what they're wondering about. So what we did is we actually just put some numbers to it, right? So would you rather pay 6.5 for a $700,000 house or 5.5 for a 735? I would change this today because now rates are more like 7, right? And next week they're going to be even higher. But I would use current numbers and then just do the math for people and then figure out what's the difference in principal and interest in the payments, right? So this math assumes the buyer either bought it today at 6.5 with 20% down, and that's the P&I payment on the top. Or if they didn't buy it, but waited a year and bought it with 5.5% interest, but 20% down. So what happens? Number one, their down payment is bigger if they buy it a year from now, right? So that's more money out of pocket. Number two, they're not riding the appreciation wave. right? They don't own it for those 12 months. This conservatively assumes 5%. Probably if I redid this slide for a meeting with a buyer today, I'd change it to 13% because that's a real factual appreciation number from right now. But we wanted in this context to be conservative, so we used 5%. The difference is $200 a month, right? The difference between 35.40 and 33.39. So $200 a month over 12 months is $2,400, right, out of pocket, versus the 35 grand in appreciation plus the additional money down. And then you can forecast a break-even point for that.
Ed,
yeah.
Can we play a little devil's advocate here, please?
Yeah. You muted yourself, Brian. That's rude to yourself.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to do that before you did it to me. But Ed, the market's still going down. So you may historically say that it's going to go up 5%, but I see it still going down 5%. So I think we're going to actually lose $35,000 in appreciation, not gain it.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
Were you on at the beginning of this call, or did you?
Yeah, but I'm a buyer.
Yeah. No. I'm happy to answer.
I don't remember what you told me 10 seconds ago.
I just want anybody who showed up late to know that I've already covered this, and Brian's just making me repeat myself. No, I'm kidding. Brian, you know what? That's a great question. Here's the thing I would tell you. We are not in a depreciating market. We are seeing values decline from one month to the next, but we don't measure appreciation or depreciation month to month. We measure it year over year, right? So is this home that you buy today going to be worth less in October of 2023? I can practically guarantee it. And I'll tell you why. All of this behavior that you're seeing that's affecting pricing is emotional, right? Because buyers saw rates spike 200 basis points in May, and what did they do? They got on the sideline, right? When they got on the sideline, sellers started going, oh crap, my house is now 2 weeks on the market or whatever, and I expected it to sell in the first weekend. So now I'm going to cut my list price. And that's most of what people are seeing, are list price reductions, which if you really think about it, those were before the home got listed, they were forecasting an increasing market. And so they set their price based on that projection. And then the demand went away because of rates. And so they were like, shoot, I got to reduce my price because of that. So if your thought is, I think home values are going to go down over the next year, I would point out to you that we actually are still very much in a seller's market. Like I said, everything that's happening right now about pricing is emotional. The fact of the matter is we only have 2 months of inventory in our market. And if you're familiar with how we measure the tipping point from buyer's market to seller's market, the number is 6 months. So we would actually have to have triple the inventory that we have now in order to see depreciation. And I'm not saying that you didn't see your neighbor's house go down, right? It is happening in certain areas from 1 month to the next. But again, we don't measure it, month to month. We measure it year over year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm just still a little nervous right now about everything.
Well, what I would tell you is it's your money, it's your house, right? If you want to stay on the sideline, you can, but you're going to miss out on appreciation. And everyone says, gosh, I wish I would have bought 2 years ago. Well, 2 years from now, people are going to be saying the same thing.
Realtor, not as a buyer anymore, 100% agreed. Everybody's been sitting on the sidelines since 2016 is kicking themselves in 2018, then 2020, now 2022.
Yeah.
So agreed. All right. No, thank you for just doing that. That's a lot of the feedback that we're getting from our buyers.
Totally.
giving them stats, giving them everything, but they're just emotional, whatever news or whatever they're listening to are still scared.
One other point.
Yes. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, the 5% drop is from a theoretical value. They were counting on their property being worth some amount, and maybe they had to drop their price, but that's not really a 5% drop from the true value of the property. That was from their expectation of an appreciated price. 100%. So it may be a softening of the upward curve, but it doesn't mean that if you bought a property 6 months ago, it's actually worth 5% less than it was.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's very true. Plus, you don't lock in a loss until you sell anyway. And so most of these people aren't going to suffer a loss forever, because if they're analyzing it based on what they paid for the home, they still have a gain. If it's such a terrible market, why is the IRS holding out their hand when you sell your house? What other questions? Role play?
Could you go back to number 5 real quick?
Yeah. Yes. There. And we can put this slide deck on the Agent Power Huddle site. Lisa, I don't know if you're on here, but I will send it to you. And if you guys want to plagiarize this thing, I would, right? And then host an event and either to frame it for buyers. Hey, come into my event. We're going to teach you on the top 6 reasons why now is still a good time to buy. Or host an event for agents. That's what we did. We had about 20 agents come in and we just masterminded on this topic. You got it, Sally. We'll make sure those get to you. Did you get what you needed, Scott?
Yeah, go to 6 again.
Too fast. There you go. And I'll tell you, the first time I created the slide deck, I used 10%. And I wish I hadn't changed it now that the numbers came out and it ended up being 13. But so Brian, back to your role play, that's the thing that you all should be doing with your market. Figure out what is the year over year appreciation right here in Denver or wherever you're at, so that when somebody says, I'm convinced it's going to go down, you can rebut that, right? We're not trying to get into an argument, but most buyers are formulating this opinion based on emotion, right? And I like to sprinkle some facts on people. I still want them to make their own decision, but a lot of people just don't know the facts. Any other questions or comments? We're kind of getting close to the bottom of the half hour.
Agreed. Can you go back to 4 real quickly? I missed 4.
Yeah.
I got them written down except for 4.
4 is rates.
Oh, just rates again? Okay.
Yeah. So the rates was mentioned twice. The second time was the refi argument of it. And the first one was hey, if you think they're going up, isn't it smarter to get today's rate rather than wait for tomorrow's rate?
Right.
Any other questions or comments? Brian, did you see Scott's chat?
No, I missed it.
He said you're still in Vegas.
Why do you think I got the background on?
Exactly.
So, no,
right.
I have a couple members of my team on here. I'd love to hear from them because they're also dealing with this on the front lines. Does anybody have anything that a buyer has stumped them on? That, Ed is great, and this slide deck is great. And I would just role play this, everybody, with mirror on the wall until you had it down. So
totally good advice.
Could I say something?
Please.
So I think so. I have a team. I'm a team leader in Michigan, and I do real estate with my fiance in California. So we have 2 places. I think a lot of this BS that's happening, I think a lot of it is real estate agents just getting in their own head and talking themselves out of working with the clients who want it. For us, we have a large database, about 300,000. And
wow,
every agent, I'm not saying every agent, but a lot of agents on my team, if one person says something out of 10, then every lead they called that day said it. I think a lot of it is mindset. When you step into the seat in the morning, look, I come from the Jeff Glover days, where you're calling FSBOs and expireds. If you're going to get hung up on, people are going to tell you rates are bad and this and that. You can handle the objection, and really it gets back down to the condition. What was the reason the client started looking to move in the first place? Something is causing them to move. Can you resolve that problem? Look, if the problem is not big enough, they weren't going to move anyways, regardless if the rate was 1%, right? So if you can find the condition that caused them to put the information and caused them to contact you, all the rates and all that become irrelevant. And then you work through the people you want. I get it. If you're calling a database of 300,000 people, that can get irritating, getting hung up on all day. But if you make 100 dials a day, I can guarantee you that you could find 2 or 3 people who are going to tell you what their problem is. And if you can be relatable, know, like, and trust, and you walked in their shoes before, they're going to work with you. And I think a lot of it is just mindset, to be honest. That's just my opinion.
You nailed it. I wish your name was in there because I'm pretty sure it's not prospecting.
Oh, no, my name is Daryl Wazinski. I'm Jesse's friend, Brent Connolly. Sorry, this is just a prospecting computer that I got named Daryl Wazinski.
No worries. I was like, when you have 300,000 in your database, you have to put prospecting as your name when you're on a Zoom. Don't talk to me, prospecting. So, no, I appreciate your input, and you're totally right. We kind of say around our office, it's the 6 inches between your ears, right? And that typically is the agent. And think about how many times you've seen an agent do a video on YouTube showing how many red down arrows there are in their market, right? Saw somebody say, don't wait to buy real estate and wait. That's amen to that. Anyway, all right, well, we've reached 8:30. I appreciate all of you, and we had a pretty good turnout. And if you like today, Lisa has roped me into handling Agent Power Huddle every Thursday for the rest of the year. So I'd love to see you all back here. All right. Hilaire, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
You guys have an awesome day. All right.
Thank you, Ed.
You bet. Good to see you, Brian. See you, Scott.
Bye-bye.
Stacy, Mike, nice to meet you.
Thanks, Ed.
If you'd like more information or to get connected to the Agent Power Huddle, join our free Facebook group. This call was designed for the agents in our EXP organization, but open to any agent from any brokerage. If you're a guest and you're interested in learning more about EXP or our specific resources within the Agent Collective, reach out to the person who invited you to this call to get more info. Produced by the Agent Collective Media Network.